Okay.
It's running.
When I say okay, that means yes. So now I'm taping myself talking, saying okay.
See, I have a wife. Don't you love it? Anyhow,
Good morning.
good morning, Palm Springs. I'm sitting here working hard for your association in Carmel, California, where it's freezing cold. But I'm here doing my job as you asked me to do. I'm also sitting here with Sanjay Waggle, right?
Wagley, actually.
Wagley,
Yeah.
okay. He's our chief lobbyist in Sacramento. And Sanjay, so what are the main issues right now going on in Sacramento that you're working on?
Well, in terms of our legislative package this year, we've had a number of sponsored bills going on, and all of those are actually moving very easily, frankly, through the legislature, because most of them are very non-controversial, bipartisan appeal. That doesn't mean that they're super easy to get through. There's a lot of background work that gets done on those bills to make sure that they're non-controversial, bipartisan bills. The only bill that has run into a hiccup, I guess you could say, is the online notary bill that CAR sponsored, and that was AB 743. And that bill, unfortunately, because the Secretary of State assessed a very high fiscal cost to it, was stopped in appropriations. Anything that has a high fiscal cost this year is challenging because of the state's anticipated budget deficit. There is, however, a competing, I don't want to call it competing, there's another online notary bill that is still moving forward, in part to, frankly, the politics of it all. It was not stopped in Senate appropriations because the appropriations chair is the author of that bill. So that bill is moving to the Assembly. We are not in support of that bill yet. We are not in opposition to the bill, though, either. We are waiting to get a read on whether or not, historically, there's been opposition from the Attorney General about certain provisions in that bill. We're waiting to see what happens there. It is possible we would move to support. So we're just watching what happens with that bill. Just to be clear, we do not oppose that other bill.
But let me ask you a question now. If you go to Arizona and do an online notary, does that count in California?
Legally, it would, because of the Constitution's full faith and credit clause, as long as it's valid, as long as Arizona's law allows that to happen, where a California person uses the Arizona notary, so that could be enforceable in California. Generally, county recorders are recording those documents, but just to be cautious, some title companies, some county recorders will sometimes balk at those kind of notarizations, but again, due to the Constitution, those are enforceable.
So if you had a Canadian and they did it in Colorado, online notary, would that work? Because we get a lot of Canadians that buy in our...
So it would depend. If they went to Colorado and did the online notarization, this is where it gets all complicated regardless.
I didn't
even if they did a Colorado, let's say, non-online notarization, it would have to be a valid notarization under that state's law for the California contract. So it's getting a little complexity there, but
all right, let's talk about the 15% tax on vacation rentals.
So
that's a big issue in Palm Springs.
Understandably. So SB 584 would impose a 15% tax on owners of short-term rentals. Technically, though, the way to think about it, we say it's a tax on owners. Technically, it's a tax on the person renting that is collected by the owner.
Right, yeah, because it's always the consumer that pays. People don't realize that there's a tax the consumers are paying.
So that's what's technically happening. And that bill, it was interesting. We were one of the early opponents to this bill. And at the time, the platforms actually did not oppose the bill early on when it was going through committee. When it went to the Senate floor, the platform stepped in, as well as the chamber, and joined our opposition as well. That, though it moved through, it's a tax, it got its 2/3 vote, it is now in the Assembly. Negotiations are ongoing with a lot of groups. We're still opposing. And all I can say is we're going to have to see what happens on that.
But it requires a 2/3 vote, and then it has to go back to the Senate again and be voted on, right?
Only if there's any changes. So if there's any amendments made to the bill in the Assembly, then it would have to go back to the Senate. If the Assembly just took it whole, which is very rare, just FYI, then it could actually just pass through. But that's not common. There is also an exception for operators of Airbnbs if their aggregate, if their total if you earn less than $100,000 from facilitating.
Yeah,
or-
and that wipes a lot
so
of
that
people
yeah,
out.
that would take a
Yeah.
lot of owners of Airbnbs out of the picture. We're just gonna have to see where we are on this. We right now are straight opposition. We do see a path there, but if it becomes increasingly untenable, we may have to try to strike some sort of deal. We'll just have to see what happens.
So can you just explain real quick? We've got about 30 seconds left. So the bill goes, so it originates in the Senate and the House, and that has to be done by May 31st, right? Voted on. Then it moves, and so it goes to committees, and so then everybody takes a vacation in August, so none of
Correct.
this really gets voted on until,
It probably will not be voted on until after the session, right, which would be mid-August.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so the committee votes. Well, as I said, there's constant. You'll see what the questions are in the committees, where the sticking points. A lot of this also depends on, in terms of our position has just been oppose. Frankly, we raise concerns, but our position is just oppose. And I don't know if this would happen, but I'm just saying, let's say hypothetically one of the platforms strikes a deal, then that makes opposition much more difficult, because they'll be like, well, if the platforms are happy, why what's your problem? So
Anyhow, Sanjay, thanks so much for doing it, and we're going to get you down live in Palm Springs
Yeah, that'd be great.
sometime. Yeah. All right, thanks
all
so
right,
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to you, Frank. So SB9, you were going to